This video is brought to you by OM System, maker of the OM System cameras and their beautiful M-Zuiko lenses for them. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for 3 Blind Men and an Elephant, and I'll just cut to the chase 8 months after it was launched. I am pleasantly surprised by OM System's retro-styled $1,850, 413-gram OM-3. The OM-3 is a lovely homage to the breakthrough 35mm film Olympus OM-1 of 1973 and, with its front fascia creative wheel, used for quick selection of factory-installed and user-created and recallable color profiles, an homage as well to the 1960s-era 35mm half-frame Pen F and subsequent digital Pen F inspired by it, introduced back in 2016. 2. For those of you new to the OM system, the OM-3 carries into the digital era a similar, but of course not identical manual arms of those film cameras. 3. It does not carry into the digital era the equivalent of the 24 by 36mm frame of the original 35mm film OM-1, however. It uses instead the same 20-21 megapixel micro four thirds sensor of their flagship OM-1 Mark II, even though they're about the same price, hold that thought, with the identical processor. 3. One can thus think of the OM-3 as either a modestly decontented OM-1 Mark II, lower resolution EPF, single card slot, slower mechanical shutter burst rate, smaller buffer, repackaged in a retro-styled body, which is, by the way, a first for OM System, or a more significantly upgraded OM-5 Mark II, again repackaged as a retro camera with newer sensor, newer hybrid phase detection autofocus, dramatically faster burst rates, much higher native ISO, more sophisticated video. You get the idea, along with a number of computational imaging capabilities that neither earlier camera has, with a surprisingly unconventional but intuitive way of accessing them I've not seen in any other camera, and I think it works well. With this said, however, as a street photographer, I'm not a fan of point-of-capture futzing. Just about the only kind of onboard computational imaging I'm comfortable with actually serves as prep work for editing here in the Batcave. Handheld exposure bracketing on the street for urban landscape, tripod-mounted focus stacking and pixel shifting for product shots, macro shots here in the Batcave. Again, the OM-3 handles both of these as well. I've never met a handheld pixel-shifted image I like. Subways in Manhattan, 10 or 15 stories below, have ruined those kinds of shots for me in the past. My takeaway has always been this: if high resolution is what you need, and you can afford it, buy a high-resolution camera. If you can't afford it, buy the lenses offering the fields of view you'd otherwise crop into to get the image you want. Or zoom with your feet. The OM system is brilliant at getting the lenses you need. But hey, if you're not like me and you're into, say, tripod-mounted long exposures, you might really enjoy the OM-3's internal electronic neutral density filter, or the adjustable and placeable graduated neutral density filter as well. As for live composite or starry sky autofocus, not my jam, and the irony is not lost on me that we need computational imaging for infinity focus when we didn't have to half a century ago, because infinity was just a hard stop away. Oh well. 4. The M-Zuiko Micro Four Thirds lenses for the OM-3 benefit from an image circle with the diameter just about half that of a full-frame lens, in turn covering about 1/4 the area. All else being equal, this means they can be dramatically smaller and lighter than even APS-C lenses, and OM System makes a number of terrific ones, hold that thought. The net of it is a do-it-all camera system with Okarong IBIS, fit-for-purpose autofocus, a rare IP rating, which is in fact second only to Leica's SL3 series, as best I can remember, video capabilities far beyond what most of us need in one of the most compact envelopes in the business, with a menu system and manual of arms better than a couple of the usual suspects. I think Setting aside OM Systems' own positioning of their cameras as primarily for outdoor sports and wildlife use, it makes sense to recognize the broader appeal of the OM-3, which is to say, if you are a photography enthusiast, first and foremost, looking for the emotional connection and feel in hand of a 1970s film-era retro-styled camera, but with all the mod cons in one of, if not arguably the smallest, lightest, fully spec'd bodies out there and a lens ecosystem to match. But you do not intend either to crop the crap out of your images or print wall-sized murals while inviting people to peruse them at closer than normal viewing distances. You don't need the shallowest depths of field. You don't need the absolute best dynamic range or best high ISO performance. All because you've taken the time to figure out what you truly need and what you do not. Well, I think the OM-3 should be at or near the top of your list. It's a great enthusiast camera, which can pull double duty as a professional camera, especially for photojournalism. The proof presented itself when Claudia and I were invited to visit a clean energy hydrothermal carbonization technology pilot program for wastewater just last week, and I was able to use the OM-3 in anger, as the Brits would say. I love that expression. Once we were back at home, I compared the output from the OM-3 to that of Claudia's 61 megapixel full frame A7R5. On the one hand, no surprise, I see what I always see. The very best lenses on the highest resolution sensors simply do things that smaller, lower resolution sensors cannot. But what I also saw was that for any possible purpose for which these images are likely to be used, at their request, we shared them with the Swiss consulate who were there as well because high-tech Swiss machinery is a critical element of that project. It didn't matter. Not at all. The OM-3 images looked great. The autofocus simply did the business. Still, the OM-3 doesn't exist in a vacuum, and the market has changed dramatically over the last decade. The OM-3 faces worthy competition if one is willing to think a bit more broadly than there are no direct competitors. Even if that is, technically speaking, I suppose, true. Panasonic's 26 megapixel Micro Four Thirds Lumix G9 II, for example, is an excellent camera with a newer, higher resolution sensor and is a superior video camera. But it eschews retro styling for what is one of the most compelling modern bodies out there, in my hands, even if it doesn't really compete with the OM-3 for computational imaging. Truth be told, however, I find modern camera ergonomics superior to the 1970s cameras with which I grew up, and I'd happily trade in all of that for a nicely weighted joystick. Then again, that's just me. It is also the case that while the G9 Mark II shares the OM-3's lens mount, offers a number of its own excellent Lumix Micro Four Thirds lenses, offers 30% more resolution than the OM-3, and can occasionally be found on sale for as little as $1,500 rather than the usual $1,900. This comes at the expense of being a whopping 39% heavier and almost twice the size of the OM-3, a function of Panasonic's decision to use the body shell of its full-frame S5 II for it. Great body, by the way. It works really well for me. If we loosen our criteria further to include APS-C cameras, we then have a number of retro-styled options. 1. Nikon's half the price at $1,000, 24 megapixel, 390 gram ZFC, just about the same size and weight as the OM-3. 2. Fujifilm's $2,000, 40 megapixel, but 32% larger and call it 15% heavier, Fujifilm X-T5. And 3. More directly comparable, Fujifilm's 11% smaller, 6% lighter, also 40 megapixel equipped $1,600 X-T50. Of course, there are more parameters upon which one ought to base a buying decision than size, weight, sensor, autofocus performance, computational imaging, and price. So let's go there now in detail with what I think is the most important advantage of all, the size, weight, build quality, and optical performance of those OM Solution M-Zuiko lenses. I know of no lens in the full-frame or APS-C world, for example, as compact, well-built, and optically performant at the size and weight, at normal image sizes and viewing distances, as the OM System stalwart $1,500, 880 gram, professional grade 40 to 150 millimeter f2.8 Pro, the full-frame equivalent fields of view and shallowest depths of field of an 80 to 300 millimeter f5.6. This ain't no consumer-grade lens. To get close to the reach of their $1,400, 1.3 kilo, 100 to 400 millimeter f5.6 to 6.3 Mark II, the full-frame equivalent fields of view and shallowest depths of field of a 200 to 800 f11.2 to 12.6, you'd have to look at Sony's $2,250, 2.1 kilo, 200 to 600, 5.6 to 6.3. There is no counterpoint in the APS-C or full-frame world as light, compact, and performant at normal image sizes and viewing distances as the OM System $900, 305 grams, 75 1.8, the full-frame equivalent of a 153.6. This is maybe my all-time favorite micro four thirds lens, a lens I bought with my own hard cash and which blew my mind for portraits. I mean, I was just gobsmacked by what it could do with 20 megapixels. The first full-frame alternatives, which come to mind and definitely do offer shallower depths of field, think Viltrox's brilliant, also $900, but heavy and gigundo 1.2 kilo, 135 1.8, or Sony's more than twice the price at $2,250 and 3 times the weight of the 75 1.8, 950 gram, 135 1.8 G Master. Then again, there is nothing comparable in the micro four thirds or APS-C spaces to the range of full-frame super telephoto primes from Sony, Nikon, Canon, and Sigma. There is no sensor with even half the resolution of the highest 61 megapixel full-frame sensors, barely half the resolution of the highest resolution APS-C sensors. Nikon's APS-C lens offerings are relatively meager. But the problem Nikon has is that as soon as one starts buying full-frame lenses for crop sensor bodies, weight and expense go up dramatically. Same thing with Canon. Now, I know, in none of these quick comparisons have we addressed the image quality differences attributable to those differences between a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor and a 61 megapixel full-frame sensor, in terms not only of resolution, but noise and dynamic range, let alone the differences in the processors. Still, you get the basic point. If you are not going to take fullest advantage of what those larger systems can offer, who cares if they can do what you don't need? There are other differences, but as I said at the outset, I think many, maybe most of them, are less important than total package comparisons. While the Lumix G9 II and X-T5 have higher resolution EVFs, for example, the OM-3's relatively paltry 2 million dot EVF does come with higher magnification, making it a more pleasant viewing experience than one might imagine, especially with the 4:3 aspect ratio. Both of those cameras have dual card slots that the OM-3 doesn't, and no camera I've mentioned other than the G9 II has a full-sized HDMI port, which will make a big difference if video is your primary concern. But then there's physics. At the same aperture and field of view, a micro four thirds lens on a micro four thirds body will have approximately twice the depth of field of a full-frame lens on a full-frame body. Great for macro or wide-angle work, not great where shallowest depth of field is required or even one stop of extra light can make a material difference to the image. B. In order to maintain the inherent size and weight advantage of a smaller image circle relative to full-frame lenses, micro four thirds lenses, primes in particular, will usually have smaller maximum apertures. Turns out even the fastest, most expensive micro four thirds autofocusing lenses are not as shallow as the fastest full-frame autofocusing primes. An f1.2 or 1.4 micro four thirds prime, and OM System has a number of them, are not as shallow as a full-frame f2, Never mind the 1.4, 1.2, or even 1.0 lenses available in full-frame systems. C. For the same ISO, Micro Four Thirds sensors are noisier and cannot match the dynamic range of full-frame sensors. Equalized for depth of field instead, those differences narrow, but they remain. As I just suggested moments ago, the question you have to ask yourself is, do any of these things actually matter to me? And if you think about it long and hard enough, you may be surprised by your answer. There is, however, something else: economics and momentum. A. Over the last decade or so, it is in the full-frame space where the industry has focused, pushed hardest, and invested the most, followed by the APS-C space after that, a distant second. This continues to be the case. We now have cameras like the 40-megapixel Fujifilm X-T50, smaller and lighter than the X-T5, marginally smaller and lighter than the OM-3, as I said, and the 61-megapixel Sony A7CR, which is within spitting distance of the OM-3. It is already the case that the rate of innovation in the Micro Four Thirds space has not kept pace with the rest of the industry, and I don't imagine it is all that likely to change. B. The best OM system lenses are wonderful with the latest Micro Four Thirds sensors, but I think it also likely, were a significantly higher resolution Micro Four Thirds sensor to arrive on the scene, that even those lenses would be candidates for replacement. This is precisely what has already happened in the full-frame and APS-C spaces. All of which leaves us where precisely? I'll recap and wrap it up this way. As I said, the OM-3 surprised me. It was better than I expected. Size and weight were revelatory. The menu system and displays exceeded my expectations for them. That the OM-3 is such a well-executed homage to the revolutionary early 70s OM-1 35mm film camera, not only in terms of looks and manual of arms, but in its relative size and weight, will appeal to many. Most importantly, for its diminutive size and weight, kudos OM system. At normal image sizes and viewing distances, that is to say, viewing printed images as large as what one finds paging through a larger coffee table photo book, or viewing on an Instagram post as an OLED screen as small as those found on the smallest smartphones. The image quality was excellent, 20 megapixels or not. Most of us will never need more resolution, and OM system has some wonderful lenses like that tiny but absolutely brilliant 75 1.8 and the optically superb and delightfully old-school in hand 40 to 150 2.8 Pro. The 12 to 40 millimeter f2.8 Pro is pretty great too. But like anything else, the OM system has its weaknesses, beginning with the absence of any lens in their lineup that can match the shallowest depth of field available in the full-frame and APS-C space, if that's what you want. Its Micro Four Thirds sensor cannot match full-frame sensors, especially for high ISO noise performance or dynamic range. Like all modern cameras, the autofocus system has too many options, too much to futz with. The only camera company of which I'm aware that offers a dedicated autofocus control is Panasonic, but I wish even they would allow me to set it up as a toggle between two autofocus modes, IAF and center field. Some of us will prefer the ergonomics and handling of the current state-of-the-art of modern cameras. Although, of course, there's the OM-1 Mark II for that. And while I know of no other camera crammed with as many computational imaging options, I trade all of them in for a really nice joystick because I prefer to do my editing in post when I have the time, not at the moment of capture on the streets, when I don't. Irrespective of sensor format or styling, however, the 20 to 26 megapixel mirrorless ILC market is crowded with compelling alternatives. And if you hang Mongo-sized prints on your wall or crop the crap out of your images, you will hit the limit of the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem. It's why Claudia and I went to high-resolution sensors, because we do, and we do. Still, for most of us, I think OM system has created a camera and lens ecosystem highly attuned to it, which transcend the outdoor sports and wildlife segment the company itself has targeted. I think, for those of us looking for what it does exceptionally well, it's a great option for the street, for travel, even photojournalism. That's it. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comments section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video called via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost-to-you affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.